an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Dark Lord of Derkholm, brought to you by Patricia. This is a voyeur live read episode, and I am going to be reading the next approximately 50 pages to you aloud. I am not sure what happens. I don't know why Patricia commissioned this to be live, but I'm very interested in finding out what happens because Mara is going to be center stage in this episode, and apparently whatever goes on with her is pretty intense. Welcome to Spoil Me. All right, everybody, welcome to the show. My name is Natasha. So, as I said to start off with, and I'm just double checking here exactly how many chapters this is. Chapter, let's see, 22 is where I'm going to be starting, I believe. And I, because some of these are different, okay, no. Chapter 21 is where I'm going to be starting. And that chapter is about 20 pages long. So I'm going to be doing chapters 21 and 22 live. And hopefully that is about what Patricia anticipated. So let's get started, shall we? Because I am super interested to find out what the hell happens here that she wants me to read live so much. Chapter 21. Blade looked at the distant clump of trees hiding Aunt's house, and the inviting spire of smoke rising up from it, and decided that it would be silly not to go down there. Besides, he doubted if the pilgrims would let him lead them away from it. Dad Poole said, "Hey, that looks inviting," and most other people said thankfully, "Civilization at last," while Suki said, "I'm cold, I'm hungry, and I'm tired. I'm not going a step further on this stupid tour unless I can have a bath and wash my hair." You shall, my lady," Revel assured her. He was looking at the spire of smoke as eagerly as anyone there. Blade looked them over uncomfortably. Most had that pinched and withered look you get from being out in all weathers with too little food. The women drooped. The men nearly all had slightly villainous beginnings of beards. They clearly needed a rest. As Blade looked, Miss Ledbury met his eye. For a wonder, she did not say anything, but Blade knew what she meant. They were to go down to that house, or Mr. Chesney would want to know why. Professor Ledbury just smiled. He was the only one who seemed to be thriving on the tour. He actually looked younger than when they had first arrived, sort of boyish, Blade thought. The trouble was, Mara was not expecting them yet. Blade cleared his throat and stroked his beard importantly. "Our first clue lies within that hidden house," he said, "and we must go there. But great danger lies within as well. It is the lair of an evil enchantress. Perchance she is away from home. I will go ahead and scout. The rest of you follow slowly. Geoffrey, make sure they do." Geoffrey nodded cheerfully, and Blade knew his orders would be obeyed. "Be prepared to flee if I shout," he warned them as he set off. He rode down the vale at a canter, throwing up divots of moist turf, and slowed up only when he came to the little gate into the wood. The village mayor met him there, looking most magnificent in a sort of priestly cope of silver and blue. "It's all right, we saw you coming," he told Blade. "You're not the only ones to come at the wrong time. The last lot are just leaving, so she says you might as well bring yours in now. But bring them this way, so they don't see the other lot." "Right. Thanks." Blade turned and made glad beckonings. The group of people cautiously approaching across the pastures broke into an eager gallop, even Mother Poole, who actually stayed in her saddle, so anxious was she to get to civilization. The mayor solemnly bowed each of them through the gate and led them among the trees to spacious stables that Blade did not remember ever being there before. Here boys and girls from the village, also dressed in blue and silver, led the horses away. Every one of them was trying not to laugh at the sight of Blade in his beard. Blade glowered as he followed the mayor into... He looked up at what had been Aunt's house. Wow, he thought. The place was a small fairy palace with tinsel towers. His mother stood in the hallway in a dress that made Blade ashamed to look at her. Everyone else goggled. He heard Shona murmur, "Honestly, Mother!" Mara smiled and welcomed everyone. And, as Blade knew because he could feel a sharp, headachy tingling, she bespelled every soul who trooped in past her, except Blade himself. "Why did you do Shona, too?" he whispered. "She was going to give trouble. I could see it in her eye," Mara said. "What's the matter with her? Why is she here, anyway?" Blade explained about the scroll from the bards. "But I think it's Geoffrey Slightholm who's the matter with her now," he said. "Ah, well, I can look into that while she's here. Poor Shona," Mara said. "And you look damp and tired out, my love. Go upstairs and get dry and clean and rested, and come down when you're ready for something to eat. Then you can see what this is all about. You can take that beard off if you want. No one's going to notice." Blade went without thinking to the room he usually had when he stayed in Aunt's house, and it was still there, looking just as usual in the midst of the fairy palace. Fran's cousin Greta from the village was just finishing changing the sheets on the bed. "It's like running an inn, this," she told Blade. "One person out, next person in, and hardly time to get sheets washed between. But it's all in good cause. Your mother's a wonderful woman, Blade." "Yes, but that dress," said Blade. Greta laughed. That's her modest one. She said to me, "Oh dear, Blade's on his way here now, and I don't want him to see any of the usual dresses. Where's that one that covers the top of me got to? And we couldn't find it at first. We had a right panic, I can tell you." Oh. Blade could not help wondering about Mara's other dresses then. After Greta left, he fell on the bed and slept. It was early evening when he woke. His first act was to get rid of the beard. That was such a relief that he almost decided not to have a bath until he realized that his reason was that Suki had whined on about needing a bath and knew that this was childish of him. So he got clean and dressed in the ordinary clothes that Greta had hung over a chair for him. They were some of his own old clothes that Mara had obviously brought along here specially. Blade was pleased that she had remembered, but a bit rueful that the clothes still fitted him. 2 years ago, when Kit and Colette were growing so big, Mara had promised Blade that he would shoot up to be taller than Dirk when he was 14. But this still had not happened. Feeling very hungry by then, he went downstairs. Down here, the whole house was different. Blade made his way toward the place where, by the sounds, there seemed to be a party going on. He could hear a continuous humming roar of voices, mixed with singing and someone playing the flute, and the clinks of glasses and plates. Blade thought he recognized the flute playing as Shona's, and sure enough, as soon as he entered the vast, draped, glittering saloon that had once been Aunt's drawing room, the first person he saw was Shona. Shona was standing on a dais, looking flushed and happy and very pretty in her best dress, playing her flute as if nothing else mattered in the world. The village choir in blue and silver was on the dais behind her, doing the singing. The rest of the room was full of people sitting in pairs at little gilded tables, talking and eating. One of the village girls grabbed Blade's arm. "Here you are. This table's you. Your mum says eat first and then go around and listen to what they're all saying. It's a scream, really. They don't notice a thing with all the spells she's got on them, but I wish you'd kept that beard. I wanted to see it." "You'll see it tomorrow." There was a huge meal steaming on the little table, all Blade's favorite foods. Blade sat on the one little gilded chair and became very busy for a while. He could tell as he ate that Lyda had not cooked this food, though someone had done it quite well, which saddened Blade because it meant that Lyda still was not back from planting the clues. But he could hear Elda's voice ringing out from somewhere across the saloon. Elda was the first person he looked for when he was finally satisfied. The days of traveling had left him hungrier than he had thought possible, but he was done at last. Elda was right on the other side of the huge room, couched opposite one of the straight-haired, serious pilgrim girls that Blade still could not tell apart. Elda was very pleased with herself. She had a small twinkling tiara fixed across her crest, and other long twinkling threads streaming across her wings and her back. Her coat and feathers gleamed with care, rich gold and smooth, right down to the tuft on her tail, which, with Elda, was usually a mucky blob, but was now an elegant, fluffy tassel. Blade could see it whisking excitedly above Elda's gleaming back. To get to her, Blade had to go past most of the other tables in the room. There was a pilgrim at each table, facing someone from Mara's household. Most of them were people from the village, but some were people Blade had never seen in his life. The nearest table held a rather majestic lady in crimson, sitting across from Miss Ledbury. At first he thought he had never seen her before, but as he passed he heard her say, "Oh, no, my dear, I'm afraid I was more ruthless than that. When I realized that my husband was going to let the city be destroyed and keep all the money himself, I put him in a dungeon and took over." Miss Ledbury seemed quite unusually bemused. Her notebook was lying beside her plate, but she seemed to have forgotten it. She leaned forward and asked anxiously, "Is he still in the dungeon?" The lady in crimson picked the notebook up and put it in Miss Ledbury's hand. "No, my dear, the elves let him out. Do remember to take notes, won't you? We want this all down in black and white. He's not Duke any more, and I don't think the people will have him back." The Duchess of Chell, Blade thought, edging past. Well, I never. Miss Ledbury was scribbling industriously, and the Duchess was saying, "But it was quite an operation to make sure all the citizens were safe," as Blade moved on to the next table, where, as the mayor was describing to Dad Poole how they had to dismantle the village in order to meet Mr. Chesney's requirements, Mother Poole, at the next table, was listening to old George's son, young George, who was telling her exactly how much everyone who assisted with the tours got paid. "It's not equal pay, by any means," Blade heard young George say, "when you think that King Luther is getting 200 gold this year, and the dragons are only getting their 1 gold goblet each every 5 years. Beyond this, Blade edged past Suki, who was listening to a lady dressed in the same sort of doeskins as the horse lady describing what happened to horses in the battles. To Blade's surprise, tears were pouring down Suki's face. At the table after that, Revel had his face wryly twisted as he listened to the death rate among the legions. By now, Blade had seen what was going on, so it did not surprise him when he reached Elda to hear Elda saying to the long-haired girl, "No, you still seem to think Dad keeps me like something in a zoo. I'm a person, not a teddy bear or a savage beast." Elda shot Blade a friendly talk-to-you-later look and went straight on talking. "Anyway, I was telling you, Kit had just got over the top of the big tree when he yelled out that his strength had gone and he let go, just like that, and Blade and the swing fell straight down into the tree. Blade shot Elda a look at that. He remembered this only too well. Elda swung her beak around defiantly at him and continued, "I was ever so small then. I was only 6, and I yelled, but there was no one else near, and Blade was coming down through the tree, sort of bouncing on his back and screaming, and I had to do something. So I flew up into the tree and tried to catch him, and then we both came down through the tree, but much slower, and my wings didn't seem to help much. Dad said that was because they weren't properly developed yet. He was furious with me as well as Kit and Blade, and Kit made an idiot of himself going up and down over the tree, howling out that it was an accident all afternoon, and Dad told him to pull himself together, but he couldn't. Anyway, we were 2 griffins and 1 human, and Dad treated us just the same. That's what I'm trying to tell you." Blade made another face at Elda. "Just the same?" he asked. "You got off lightly compared to Kit and me." "Hush," said Elda. "I'm telling it." She tossed her tiaraed head at him and turned back to the pilgrim girl. Beyond Elda, Mara was reclining on a couch. Geoffrey was perched on a stool beside the couch, and Mara and he were talking very seriously. Blade did not want to interrupt them any more than he wanted to listen to Elda's memories. He went over to the dais and listened to the music. But it all went on for hours. Every so often, Shona and the choir took a rest, sitting on the edge of the platform with filled rolls and drinks. Whenever they did, the pilgrims all got up and changed tables. By the end of that long, long evening, each pilgrim had listened to all the speakers. Miss Ledbury's notebook was 3/4 full, and every one of Blade's party had had a talk with Mara herself, though none for so long as Geoffrey. Blade's head ached, and he was sick of the rumble of voices and the sweet scents that seemed to come from the draperies. They are working hard, he thought, if they do all this every day. Finally, however, the Pilgrims and Shona suddenly got up and went to bed, moving like sleepwalkers. Everyone else stretched and relaxed. Mara fished a dressing gown from under her couch, wrapped it around her, and came to hug Blade. Elda bounded up and pressed against the back of him. "That was exhausting," Mara said. "It's the double spell that makes it so tiring. You have to make sure they go away thinking they've been thoroughly seduced, but still remembering all the things we've told them. It was a great help that you've got one who takes notes, Blade. Kirita reckons that if we send everyone home knowing the real facts, some of them are going to make trouble there for Mr. Chesney. And I really think that some of this lot of yours might, Blade. You've got some rather interesting people here. Do you understand what we're trying to do?" "Yes," Blade said, although he still did not think it justified the clothes under Mara's dressing gown. "And it's fun," Elda said. "I had a long talk with the young man Shona seems to have fallen for," Mara said. "Geoffrey, I saw," said Blade. "He's fallen for her, too. He seems very nice," Mara said, and hesitated as if she was wondering whether or not to say something else. "But, Mom," Blade protested, "it's not just that he's a pilgrim. He's down as expendable." "Oh," said Mara, "that makes a difference. Then I think for Shona's sake you'd better make sure he survives." Blade thought of Prince Talathan efficiently running his sword into that pilgrim during the battle. "How can I, Mom?" "Do you know how to put protections around a person?" Mara asked. "No," Blade said crossly. "Nobody's taught me anything useful. You know that." "All right, I'll do it. I'll go and do it now," Mara said wearily. "And I suppose while I'm at it, I'd better do the same for his odious little sister." "Suki's not expendable," Blade said. "I wish she were." Mara sighed. "Yes, but from what Geoffrey was telling me, she shouldn't be here. Her parents think she's on holiday in her own world. She seems to have twisted Geoffrey's arm to bring him here with him." Blade went to bed thinking that this was entirely typical of Suki. He could not understand why Revel seemed to like her so much. In the morning, Blade glumly regrew his beard while he was consulting the Black Book and the pamphlet to see where he was supposed to go next. Around by the Emirates, on the way to the inland sea, he discovered, all right. He put his robes on and went to the kitchen, where Elda found some scissors, and Mara cut him a hole in the beard for his mouth. Then they hung over him, making sure he had a large breakfast and enough food packed in his blanket to last a week. Mara told him what to do next. Blade said a reluctant goodbye and went out into the paddock where all the horses were waiting, ready saddled. There, as Mara had told him, he raised both arms in a dramatic, wizardly gesture. That side of Aunt's house rolled up like a blind, revealing the saloon, where all the Pilgrims and Shona were just finishing breakfast. "Be thankful I am here to rescue you from vile enchantment," Blade shouted. They sprang up as if he had pricked them and came streaming sheepishly outside. "Get mounted," Blade told them. "We must hurry away." And he rushed about, making sure of everyone's girths, trying to avoid Shona, but it did no good. She waited by Blade's horse and grabbed his arm before he could mount. "Was I enchanted too? Mother did that to me?" she whispered angrily. Blade could not think of anything to say but the truth. "She said you were going to make trouble." Shona was furious. Her cheeks colored, her mouth pursed, and she looked around into the opened-up saloon as if she had half a mind to storm back inside. But for some reason she changed her mind and marched away to her horse in a manner Blade knew was ominous. He watched her anxiously all that day. He knew what Shona was like. She had waited weeks once to revenge herself on Dawn, and by the time she did, Dawn had forgotten the quarrel entirely and felt very surprised and injured. But this time, Shona seemed to do nothing but chat happily to Geoffrey and sing songs for the Pilgrims. It never occurred to Blade that Shona might have grown up since then. By the end of the day, he had decided that Shona must be plotting a long-term revenge of some kind. Maybe she was waiting until she saw Mara again, but she was quite as likely to be angry with Blade, too. Blade knew he had to be very wary, so he went on watching and made plans for what he would do in case Shona pushed him into a river or gave him something horrible to eat, or, worse, told the pilgrims what age he really was. The trouble was that Blade was so preoccupied with Shona that he had very little attention for the route. He relied on the way he knew where to go when he translocated, and it never occurred to him that this might be an entirely different sort of sense of direction. He led the pilgrims toward where he thought the Emirates were, with the result that he led them steadily in the wrong direction for the next 3 days. True, they arrived at a camp on the first 2 nights, but as Shona told Dirk when he came looking for them, these were almost certainly the camps that were intended for tours on the other 2 routes. By the end of the 3rd day, they were crossing country that no pilgrim party had ever crossed before. Some days after that, Scales came coasting down into Dirk's camp by the river and told him that Blade had disappeared. Blade has disappeared! So that's the end of chapter 21. That was pretty interesting. So they're doing like a guerrilla info wars, except like actually information and not, crazy right-wing conspiracy theories and rhetoric. All right, so I'm going to start on chapter 22. I just want to double check. Patricia, you're here now, right? You want me to do 21 and 22. Did you also want me to do 23 or just live read 22 and then have me comment after that one? I will get started and await your comments. Okay. 22. Nothing seemed to be going right for Dirk. He was now so busy that he had not thought about his new homing pigeon for days. Prince Talathan had found 3 more cities deserted when he tried to sack them, and he was, to Dirk's mind, being extravagantly upset about it. "I have failed you, Lord," he kept saying, and 3 angry wizards translocated in. One said that the pirates had demanded higher pay before they captured a single pilgrim more, and the second wanted to know why the dragons had deliberately dropped his pilgrims in the snow a day's walk from the dragon with the gizmos. The third complained that the emir had no slave girls, and my pilgrims were expecting them, he said. "They're talking of suing me." "How did they know what to expect?" Dirk asked wearily. "Unless you told them." "They'd heard things from the last year," the wizard defended himself. "I may have dropped a hint or so, but they knew what I meant." "I'll take it up with Karita," Dirk promised. He sent the daylight owls to Karita with a message about it, and also hopelessly asking whether Karita had invented a god yet. He came back from interviewing pirates and arguing with dragons to find, as he had half expected, that the owls had returned with a note signed by someone else saying that Karita was very busy just now and would get in touch later. Dirk glumly faced the fact that Karita had no intention of helping him. He was tired. Any spare time he had was taken up with journeys to Derkholm, where at least 2 pilgrim parties arrived every day to confront him and push him into the balefire. The day after a battle, there were often as many as 7 parties waiting for him. Dirk was sick of falling backward into his trench, but he never had time to invent a different way of being killed. The griffins were tired too, and Pretty was bored. Pretty was so bored with the wild hunt that he started leading the dogs off in the wrong direction. Don got quite hysterical about it, even worse than Prince Talathan over the empty cities. But he forgave Don because it was borne in upon him that Don was too young really to be in charge of anything. He put Colette in charge of the hunt instead, and Don wretchedly agreed to have another try at helping with the battles. Then the geese replaced themselves with 6 pigs and vanished. Now, not only was Colette furious, but they had 6 puzzled pigs getting under everyone's feet in the base. Every time he tripped over Ringlet, Dirk hoped savagely that the geese had gone home and the dwarfs had eaten them. But when he flew Beauty to Derkholm to get tipped into his balefire, Dirk found no sign of any geese, only increasing numbers of dwarfs. Scales seemed to have rounded up almost all of them. Looking on the bright side, Dirk thought Kit's den was packed full of treasure. Old George was being quite a convincing wailing skeleton these days, and the demons turned up faithfully to terrify the pilgrim at every confrontation. Dirk gave up wondering why the demon was doing it. He was simply almost grateful. He flew back to the base to find more things going wrong. Emperor Titus came apologetically to report that half his younger legionnaires had resigned and gone home. "They all say their mothers are ill," he said. "We sent to check, and it seems to be true. There's some kind of illness that only affects older women. We had to give them all compassionate leave." And after the emperor came the mercenary chief of the forces of good, swearing and cursing because every one of his female soldiers had deserted in the night. Kit's brow jutted, and Kit's tail lashed at this news. Dirk could hardly blame him. It was a real puzzle how the forces of good could win convincingly when half of them were missing. Kit, Dirk sometimes thought, was the only one not being a problem. Now he had stopped feeling so important, Kit had settled down and become almost sunny. Kit was the one who tried to joke Colette out of her fury over the geese. It was not Kit's fault, Dirk thought, that this had only made Colette angrier. But behind all this, Dirk was increasingly anxious about Lyra. She ought to have come back from laying clues long ago. He kept hoping she had gone to Mara. In the end, he sent Prince Talathan to find out. Mara would talk to Talathan, and it would take Talathan's mind off the disappearing citizens. But Talathan came back within the hour to say that Lyda was not with Mara, and Mara was as anxious as Dirk. "She says she will cause other lady wizards to search, Lord." Dirk sent the daylight owls off to look for Lyda too. Lyda was too young, just like Dawn, and he knew he ought not to have asked her to fly so far. He never would have asked her if he had not been ill. He had just sent the owls off when Scales arrived with the news that Blade had disappeared. Dirk's stomach twisted, and he was nearly sick with worry. At first he thought that the whole party, Shona included, had gone missing. "No, you misheard me," Scales rumbled. The reason he knew Blade was missing, he said, was that while he was checking for dwarfs from the eastern range, he had flown across a pilgrim party wandering miles from anywhere a tour should be. "I dropped down and spoke to them," he said. "Your Shona seemed to be in charge, and she told me. Some crisis in the night, young Blade seems to have vanished in a clap of noise, taking 2 of the others with him." Blade now, Dirk thought. Blade was too young, just like Dawn and Lyda. He ought to have refused to let Blade be a wizard guide, whatever the oracle said. "Show me where they are on the map," he said. He unrolled the map and pinned it down with stones. Scales' great head bowed over it, and one long claw very delicately made a tiny prick mark right in the middle of nowhere. "There," said Scales. "Nothing else for miles." Said Dirk. If he got the balefire fallen into quickly tomorrow, he would be able to get to that region and still be back for the battle the day after that. "Thanks," he said to Scales. "Could you spare time to look for Blade at all?" "Be glad to," said Scales. "I was getting bored hunting dwarves." Before he left for Derkholm the next day, Dirk checked up on the soldiers in the dome. This was another worry nagging at the back of all the others. It was hard to pin down, but years of spells not going quite right, from the Blue Demon on, had given Dirk a feeling for magic that was not acting as it should, and he was sure that the spells Barnabas had put on the dome were not holding in some way. The men in black were behaving as soldiers should, drilling, exercising, queuing at the cookhouse, resting, caring for weapons. But Dirk was sure that something, somewhere, was not quite right. He could not place it. He went around and looked carefully at all Barnabas' workings, but they seemed to be correct. He would have liked to consult Barnabas, but Barnabas was not there to consult. Barnabas spent less and less time in the camp. Sometimes he only turned up at the last minute before a battle in a strong gust of beer smell, which was the main reason why Dirk was sure something was wrong. But he could not find it. Besides, Beauty was ready and he was in a hurry. He left. At Derkholm, he fell into his balefire 3 times in quick succession and did not wait to chat with Circlid, the 3rd wizard, at all. "Blade's missing," he explained. "I have to go. Could you do me a favor and ask the dwarfs if they've eaten a goose lately?" He left Circlid murmuring, "Goose? Why goose?" and took off in a whistling of Beauty's black pinions. Beauty was as glad as anyone to have a change from routine. She flew with a will, circling high above the hilly, trackless region that Scales had pricked out and searching as earnestly as Dirk did. It was she who found the pilgrims. "Smell horses," she announced, and she began descending long before Dirk spotted the group of riders straggling across a grassy upland. When they were low enough, Dirk saw the one in front was wearing bardic green. "That's them," he said joyfully. "Clever of you, Beauty." The riders all looked up as Beauty came swirling down. Most of the horses spooked, and so did some of the riders, to judge from the way at least 4 of them fell off. Dirk landed a prudent distance away. Shona swung down from her bucking horse and came racing over, followed by a tall male pilgrim. "Oh, Dad, I am so glad to see you. We thought you were another dragon for a second." "This is Geoffrey," Shona said. She looked wonderful, quite her old self, and prettier than ever, Dirk saw. He examined this Geoffrey, who was clearly so important to her. What a pity the man was a pilgrim. What Dirk saw, he liked. A nice person, an honest one, with a commanding look to him. "What on earth are you all doing so far off the tour route?" he said. "That was Blade," Shona said. "Oh, Dad, he never looked at the map once. I'm not sure he knows how to read a map, even. You know how you always think he must know because of the way he translocates. But I think that must be something quite different. So he's been leaving maps to Kit because Kit's good at them, and we were quite lost long before he vanished." "Yes, but what happened to Blade?" Dirk asked. "And my sister and her latest boyfriend," Geoffrey said ruefully. "They're gone too. We don't quite know what happened, sir. Our camp was raided in the night, we do know that, by quite a lot of people, on horseback. Professor Ledbury over there woke us up shouting and swinging his sword about, and we all jumped up. But it was dark and pretty confused, sir, and all I can work out is that my sister was wearing pale blue, which made her the easiest to see, and the raiders grabbed her and rode off at a gallop with Suki screaming blue murder. We think Rival, he seems pretty taken with Suki, went chasing after them on foot, and that Blade went after them both, but it's only guessing. There was a sort of bang, anyway, and Shona says it makes a bang when someone translocates fast, and the 3 of them have been missing ever since." "We've been trying to carry on," Shona explained. "We did follow the riders' tracks for a day, but we lost them the next day, and now we're trying to go on with the tour. But Blade had the map, and we don't really know where we are." "Is that what you think we should do, sir?" Geoffrey asked, polite but anxious. Difficult question. Dirk thought about it. They were days of travel from anywhere except Derkholm here. By the time they reached the Emirates, the Emir would not be expecting them anymore. If they cut out the Emir and made straight for the inland sea, the pirates would have gone home for the winter. The pirates had been very firm about when they would stop. If the party went the other way, it might just arrive in time for the very last battle. Or it might not. "Do you all want to carry on?" he asked. By this time, most of the other pilgrims had dragged their resisting horses within earshot. Dirk's question caused Miss Ledbury to come striding forward. "My good man, are you suggesting we have any choice in this matter?" Dear, dear, what a dragon, Dirk thought. She must have been quite a match for Scales. How does she keep her hair so neat? "Of course you have a choice, madam," he said. "You are the customers, and customers are always right. I was simply thinking that if you were to turn around and travel due south, that way, Shona, you would eventually reach a road. You'll know it, Shona. It goes to the university one way, and Dirk, the Dark Lord's Citadel, the other way. You could all get home quite quickly from the Citadel." "Oh, thank goodness!" exclaimed a straight-haired girl. "I am so sick of this." "On the contrary," snapped Miss Ledbury, "I have by no means completed my tour." A fierce argument broke out. It sounded as if half the party agreed with Miss Ledbury, and the rest had more than enough already. Dirk said quietly to Shona, "I'm afraid I shall have to leave you to sort this one out. I must go and look for Blade and the other 2. Geoffrey smiled at him. "Don't worry, sir. I'll let them argue, and when they're tired of it, I'll tell them they're going south." "And they'll do it," Shona said. "Believe me. See you soon, Dad. Find Blade quickly." But Dirk could not find Blade. Beauty went around and around in ever-enlarging circles, centering on the place Dirk guessed the pilgrims had been when they were raided, and there was nothing, no sight, scent, feeling of Blade or anyone else. Nothing but broken, hilly landscape, and no roads, no people, not even a solitary house. Blade could hardly have chosen a more deserted area to disappear in. In the end, Dirk had to give up and return to base, or Beauty would have been too tired for the battle the next day. The 3 griffins came anxiously to meet him. "Any luck?" asked Kit. Dirk sighed and explained. "We'll all go looking when the battle's over," Kit said. "If I give us each a sector on the map—" Don rolled his eyes. "You and your maps. Barnabas is back, by the way." "He's drunk again," said Colette. Dirk sighed even more heavily as he led Beauty over to the horse lines and unsaddled her. "I can't stand much more of this," he said to Pretty, who came cantering over to greet his mother. "Why do you?" Pretty asked brightly. "Good question," said Dirk. The sight of Pretty soothed him. He was now a splendid colt, almost as big as Beauty, bright-eyed and strong, and those striped wings of his were showing signs of being twice as efficient as Beauty's, just as Dirk had hoped. He patted Pretty's neck and went to discuss tomorrow with Kit. Naturally, he fell over Ringlet on the way. Kit had a problem. "I didn't think we'd wear the valleys out so quickly," he said. "We're on the last one already. We can't use the one beyond that. It's full of lake. And beyond that, there's nothing but thick woods. I think we may have to go out into the moors for the next battles, and that would be difficult, even with the forces of good up to proper strength." Dirk sat on a tree stump with the map draped over one knee and Ringlet's snout affectionately on the other. He saw what Kit meant. This last valley, the one Kit was using tomorrow, was quite steep and small anyway. The next one over a wooded ridge was almost entirely a lake. How many more battles have we? 6. We're almost halfway through now, Kit sighed as he saw the end of his planning and conferring coming closer. He did love it so. "If we don't move out of the moors, we have to go back and reuse the earlier valleys, and I don't see how we can. The first valley we used is still only trampled mud. I flew over and looked." "Grass doesn't grow back at this time of year," Dirk observed. "Ask Barnabas to go and green it up." "He's asleep, snoring," said Kit. "I'll do it then," Dirk said wearily. Colette silently handed him a cheese sandwich. Dirk took it, moved Ringlet in the map, and translocated to the site of the first battle, eating as he went. The valley was an awful, desolate mess, worse now the leaves had come off the trees. The autumn rains had swollen the stream into a muddy marsh, and the place was full of crows picking over the bare ground. Dirk drove the birds off and got down to work. He felt better as he set the spells for greening. Making things grow was what he was good at. Clean, absorbing, refreshing work. He was ankle-deep in marsh, and the ground was already spiked with grass blades, bright green in the setting sun, when Don came hurtling in. "Dad! All the horses have gone!" Dirk looked sadly at the 4 skidding, muddy tracks Don had made landing. "What?" "Beauty, Pretty, Nancy, Billy, all of them. Kit and Colette have flown off after them, but I'm not sure. It was more like magic. They'd left all their bridles behind." The horse lady, Dirk thought. Some pilgrim somewhere had mistreated a horse. She had carried out her threat and recalled every horse there was. "She'd no call to take Beauty and Pretty, too," he said. He was quite hurt that the horse lady had done that. "Anyway, fly after Kit and Colette and tell them to come back. It's specialized magic. They can't do any good." Ron dithered. "But you need Beauty tomorrow." "I'll have to do without her, won't I?" said Dirk. "I'll speak to the horse lady after the battle." The battle started several hours late the next day. Almost the only people who were in place in the last valley at the right time were the legions and the werewolves, who did not use horses to get there. King Luther was over an hour late. The fanatics and the mercenaries were an hour later still. It was possible that some pilgrims never got there at all. Agitated wizards kept appearing all through the night and during the dawn, imploring Dirk to hold the battle up because their parties were still 10 or 12 or 20 miles off and were going to have to walk all the way. Nobody but Barnabas got much sleep. At least the delay meant that Barnabas could be sobered up. While Kit paced up and down beside the river in black impatience, slapping the shingles with his tail, Dirk marched to Barnabas's tent and hauled the sleeping wizard out. When Barnabas did nothing but curl up on the stones and moan, Dirk took the bucket of river water Colette handed him and poured it over Barnabas. Barnabas sat up with a yell, dripping twirls of water from every curl on his head. "Have a heart, Dirk." Dirk took the flask of coffee Don handed him and passed it to Barnabas. "Drink this, then check the battle spells on the soldiers, please. They don't seem right to me." Barnabas glanced up the hill to the dome where the soldiers were dimly to be seen forming up in ranks on the parade ground. "They're fine, Dirk. Promise." "Check all the same," said Dirk. Barnabas swigged down the coffee and got up, dripping and dismal and grumbling, and trudged his way around the dome. Dirk went with him to make sure. As far as he could see, the spells were indeed in place and all correct, but yet he was still not happy about them. When Barnabas opened up the dome and the army marched out, Dirk watched the men narrowly. They all seemed just as usual. By this time the black armor, though brightly polished, was battered and rather worn, and a lot of the soldiers had got themselves extra weapons, bows and arrows mostly, but some had morning stars, dwarf axes, or a second sword picked up from dead enemies. But they had had those for several battles now. That was nothing new. Their faces inside the black helmets looked grim and unfeeling, just as usual, and yet Dirk was frustrated. Nothing was obviously wrong, but he was sure something was. He sighed and took his place at their head, on foot for a change, with Colette beside him carrying the black banner with the strange device. Drums beat, trumpets sounded. They marched to the valley. It was just as well this was a much smaller valley, Dirk thought when they reached it. Now half the legions and a third of the mercenaries were gone. The forces of good up among the trees opposite on the hill that hid the lake in the next valley were small indeed. Kit had had his work cut out to plan their victory convincingly. Their own side was smaller too, but this was because people had been killed. Kit called this natural wastage. Dirk wished he wouldn't. He gave the signal to advance. Both sides shouted and began moving downhill. As the front lines closed on one another, Kit, as usual, rose majestically from behind Dirk's lines, twice the size and with the illusion of a dark shadow riding on his back, and circled above the fighting, uttering dreadful screams. It was always awesome. Dirk stared upward admiringly. Kit looked almost as big as scales. He blocked off the light. A movement caught the corner of Dirk's eye. He turned sharply to the right. Half the soldiers there were down on one knee on the hillside, bending longbows, aiming upward. The glimpse he had of the nearest face did not look bespelled in the least. What the... Dirk slapped a hasty and ragged stasis spell out there. Bowstrings twanged and most of the arrows looped harmlessly around the hillside. But almost at the same time, Don screamed a warning from Dirk's left, and behind Don's scream, Dirk heard the breathy woof of a flight of arrows truly aimed. He whirled that way to see arrows storming into the sky, and the soldiers on that side punching the air, capering about, waving longbows, and pointing triumphantly. Above the valley, Kit screamed even more dreadfully and lurched in the air. 2 black stalks were sticking out of his chest. Another black stalk was slantwise into one wing. As Dirk stared, scarcely able to credit this, the shadowy figure vanished from Kit's back, and the mighty black illusion shrank. Kit was suddenly a black griffin half the size, tumbling and shrieking and turning in the air. One wing was flailing uselessly, whirling Kit upside down. Then he fell like a stone and plunged out of sight beyond the opposite trees. Only some big black flight feathers were left twirling above the hill. All around, the soldiers cheered and shouted their hatred and joy. They had been out to kill Kit, and they had. Beside Dirk, Colette spread her wings. "Stay where you are," Dirk snapped, "and you, Don." He translocated himself messily and so jerkily that half of him seemed to still be in the valley for a second among a battle that was breaking up into chaos. His own side was fighting itself, The werewolves, the monsters, and King Luther's men threw themselves upon the soldiers in black. Groups of pilgrims, cheering lustily at what they took to be the death of the Dark Lord, raced across the valley to join in, while the legions and most of the dwarfs and mercenaries hung back bewildered by this. It was not part of the plan. They only moved when the fanatics stormed out of the woods and began attacking everyone impartially. As Dirk arrived among the trees at the top of the opposite hill, the valley became full of a seething free-for-all. He knew he should have told Don and Colette to get to safety. They were going to be killed too. But the lake was below him, long and blue-brown. He was in time to see the reflections of trees in it tossing and breaking in the great ring of waves where Kit had gone down. Bubbles came out of the center for a moment, and then stopped. By the time Don and Colette arrived, Dirk was staring at the very last ripples lapping the shore. "I told you," he began. Then he gave up. "What's the use? Did either of you see Prince Talathan?" "He went into that green haze," Don said. "All the elves did when the fanatics came out." "Barnabas went too," Colette said sourly. "He knew I was going to pull his head off." Dirk looked at her and saw blood on her beak and her talons, but it did not seem to be her own blood, so he did not let it worry him. His mind seemed to have closed down into a very small space. There was only one thing in it. "Follow me back to camp, both of you," he said, and translocated again. In the camp, he collected the dogs, the pigs, the friendly cows, all into a huddle, and called Talathan. As Colette and Don landed by the river, the green haze swung, and Talathan stood on that shale beside them. He was pale and breathing heavily, but he bowed politely to Dirk. "You have need of me, lord?" "Yes, come over here," Dirk called to the griffins. "Talathan, do one more thing for me, then you can collect Pretty from the horse lady, and I won't trouble you again." Talathan looked puzzled. "But, lord..." "The horse lady had no business to take Pretty," Dirk said. "Tell her from me that he's yours. What I want you to do is put all of us here into your green haze and move us back to Derkholm." Talathan's eyes moved dubiously from Dirk in his huddle of animals to the two griffins. "So many," he murmured. "Can't it be done?" Dirk asked. Talathan looked at his face. His manner changed. "I was merely thinking," he said gently, "that very few have ever walked through our country. Of course it can be done. I shall take you through my own lands, lord. All of you." When King Luther and the Emperor Titus panted into the camp half an hour later, blood-spattered, exasperated, and wanting an explanation, they found the place deserted. Well, damn. That is some shit. I'm going to stop there. Is Kit dead? Is he really? That's the question. I can't decide if I believe that or not. It's not that I don't think Diana Wynne-Jones would kill Kit, because she is a ruthless bitch, as we have seen. She can be mean. But I can't decide if he's actually dead. Patricia says, which we can answer. Are you just trying to tease me? Are you just trying to tease me about how you know and I don't? You mean old biddy? Sorry, meant can't answer. Sure, that was just a mistake. Oh, God. Okay, so let's go over all of this. So, first, we go to Mara's, and she basically has like a little consulting firm with all of these people who represent different sections of the tours, having one-on-one conversations with each of the... It's like a little series of TED Talks, basically, where they all get info on exactly how the tours are set up, how little everyone's paid, how many people are hurt and injured and killed, how many animals are mistreated, how the land is torn up. And they're all under a spell during this, which I guess is what keeps them like in place, and automatically getting up and moving from one table to another and listening, like, without offering arguments or protesting or anything. I find it interesting what Mara said about how she thought that Shona was going to make trouble. Like, did she mean make trouble because of what she was wearing? Because that was like the moment Shona said something like, "Mother, that dress." And that was when Blade felt Mara put the spell on Shona. So was it just that she felt like Shona didn't approve of what she was doing? Or did she think that... I was going to say, did she think that Shona wouldn't approve of what she had arranged inside? But there's no way she could know that then. Like, knowing that Shona would make trouble, I don't know. And I'm interested, like, because Blade, you know, he talks about what a long game Shona plays when it comes to taking revenge when she's upset about something. And then Blade disappears. And it definitely occurred to me that Shona had done something to Blade after all. But it seemed like in the text she was really suggesting that, like, Shona had grown up and that she was more interested in Jeffrey than she was in revenge, because she was just, you know, her priorities had shifted. And when Dirk comes and talks to Shona, it genuinely seems like she's worried and freaked out. Like, she doesn't know where her brother is. She doesn't know where they are. So yeah, I'm just curious about what Mara meant when she said Shona was going to make trouble, because Shona does not argue on that point. She doesn't say, "No, I wasn't." She just looks at Blade when he says this, like she's mad at the fact that she got a spell put on her, but she doesn't protest the reasoning behind it at all. Which I find pretty interesting, you know, because I expected her to defend herself a little, and she doesn't even attempt to. So yeah, that's something. And I really like that there's all these notes. Like, the woman, whose name I can't remember now, the one that Dirk calls a dragon, who's taking the survey. She is taking so many notes about everything. And I'm very curious about how, like, does she turn those notes in to Chesney? Is he going to see that they, like, did this on the tours? Won't that cause some kind of, like, backlash? I keep feeling like Chesney seems to have them all under his thumb because he is in partnership with this demon, which we haven't really heard talk about since, like, the first couple of chapters. So I feel like he could really take revenge on them for, you know, deciding to do things differently, for changing everything up. I don't know how Chesney is this hands off as the tours are going on. This keeps puzzling me. But eventually we have all of these, like, it's always women. The slave girls that were supposed to be in this one section, they're not there. All of the older women get sick, which means all of these other soldiers actually bail because their mothers of a certain age all got sick at the same time. Then all of the female warriors on the side of good all bail at the same time also. So I feel like there's clearly some sort of alliance amongst all of the women in this land, headed, I think, by Mara. It could be Kirita. I don't know why it needs to be specifically women. If they just don't trust the dudes, if they think that maybe the women are a loophole in some, like, contract that Chesney has with this demon, I don't know. But that's like the constant theme, right? Is that the women are all changing up the plans and not following the instructions that they are allegedly, like, agreeing to. So yeah, I'm really, really curious about this. And then we have this whole deal with Blade disappearing. I have no idea. I imagine because he translocated. So there was this attack, right, in the middle of the night, which I don't know, like, it doesn't sound like this attack was supposed to be part of the tour. There was the earlier thing where they were supposed to be attacked by bandits, and then they find all of the bandits murdered. I do not think that this is, like, you know, that. It might be soldiers who have swooped down on them. But the girl Suki and the thief who is somehow enraptured with her, they are the two that disappear with Blade. And I can't feel like that's exactly... I know, I think it was Jeffrey who said, like, well, Suki was the easiest to see because she was wearing pale blue. And so she ran off, and then Rinnell, I think is his name, right? Or Ravel. He goes after her, and then Blade goes after him. I'm not sure that I buy that as being the thing. I can't imagine what it is. I mean, Suki isn't even supposed to be on this tour, too, which we have found out. So I can't help but wonder if that has something to do with things. But what would Blade do? Like, why would he... Would he translocate the two of them to where? Back to camp, one would think, which isn't that far. Or where, like... I don't know where he would have gone and why he would have taken them with him to wherever he went. So yeah, I don't know where the hell Blade could be and why they would be with him. Unless he was just so, like, confused and caught completely off guard by having these horses pounding around, attacking, that normal, like, because his translocation is normally pretty decent, right? Like, he's not really that far off most of the time. So, but maybe, like, being distracted and caught up in this surprise attack threw off his concentration somehow, and he wound up in a totally different place. But again, I don't see Blade chasing after Ravel and Suki and needing to translocate them back to camp. Like, it doesn't seem like Ravel and Suki would be able to run that far that translocation would be necessary instead of just walking back. I don't know why he would have done that. Unless he was like, maybe Blade was trying to translocate everyone. Like, maybe he was trying to get them all out of this attack and somewhere safe. And it just went really badly wrong, and only he went, and maybe the two of them, or maybe they were the closest to him or something. I don't know. Maybe he didn't even mean to translocate. Maybe he did it, like, out of panic, trying desperately to get away, and not really thinking it through, and it just happened. I don't know how likely that is. It doesn't seem like accidental magic is a thing in this world the way that it is in, like, Harry Potter, where extreme emotions cause things to happen. Yeah, I'm just really curious about that. And, you know, there are so many people disappearing. There are whole towns that are empty, as we see. Talathan, who is supposed to be sacking different cities, keeps finding them already empty. And either there's, like, a plan in place where they're pre-emptying these cities and everybody's doing this willingly, or people are being, like, taken out. And I could see Blade being, like, plucked up from wherever he is and being sent to safety with the other crew. But then why would Suki also be? And why wouldn't Shona? So that can't be it. I don't know, guys. I don't know. Man, and then Kit, like, I mean, the only thing I can see is that Kit's in on this whole, like, nonsense, but it doesn't sound like... So here's the thing. We obviously have something wrong with the magic. Like, Dirk picks up on that. He knows that there is something wrong with the spells that are on the soldiers. He can tell. What is wrong, apparently, is that the soldiers are not, like, under their command, I guess, the way that they're supposed to be. So they're able to turn on their own. But Kit is able to make an illusion convincing enough that he looks gigantic and looks like, you know, there's somebody riding his back. So I definitely believe that if Kit wanted to make an illusion that he had been shot with arrows and died, that he could. I just don't see why he would, unless it was to remove himself from this situation. Like, if he, you know, here's the most outlandish theory that I really don't believe, is that somehow Mara, who's like orchestrating all of these protests and strikes, essentially, gets in touch with Kit, convinces him that they're going to try and like turn on you because we've already seen this happen before or something. Or Barnabas is like in on it with Curita, so we know this is going to happen. And you need to pretend that you died and then come and help us out, which is very convoluted. I mean, it's possible, I guess, but I just can't believe that Kit's actually dead. I can't. I mean, I can't. Kit's too big and strong and full of life and power. He can't be dead. I hope he's not dead. That would be a shame. And Blade would be heartbroken. Oh my god. Blade just, like, obviously looks up to Kit like this powerful, more talented, bigger, badder, older brother, even though they're not like the same species. And I would just hate to see how Blade would react. He would be just so heartbroken. Meanwhile, Dirk has decided to straight quit. Which, like, I don't know what happens if he just quits. Like, I don't know what that does to the whole thing, you know? Like, what does that entail? Like, does he, Patricia's saying, wouldn't you? Oh, yeah, I would. But I don't know exactly what that looks like beyond, like, you know, he bails on this. He takes all of his people back with him. I assume that he's going to take all of the enchantments off of Derkholm, so it doesn't look like the dark place anymore, and that he isn't going to be playing his role of, like... And what does that look like then? Because pilgrims are still going to be showing up at his house. So, what does he do? Does he just, like, give them dinner and have them hang out and be like, well, I changed my ways. I'm not the Dark Lord anymore, and here's your portal home. Like... Does he just put a barrier up so that the pilgrims can't come at him? That's what I would do, because I wouldn't want to deal with him at all. Like, I'm not going to play nice, you know, at this point. Yeah, that would be some shit, man. I would put up a barrier. Pilgrims can't even come near me. And take it up with Chesney. Because what do I care? Like, Chesney's the one who's providing this whole service. And Chesney's like... Again, that's the one thing about this book that keeps confusing me, is how removed Chesney is from everything past the first, like, time we ever meet him, the only time we ever meet him. He is a bastard, obviously, but the parameters by which he is running things in this world are really unclear to me. So I don't know, like, he obviously can come here and talk to everybody and oversees things, but he oversees from the very beginning, and then he just bounces. And to me, during the tours is when I would want to be around, making sure things were going according to plan. So Patricia's saying he's a shadow on the world, but just a shadow figure. But yeah, that's what I mean. Like, the thing is, it feels like he's very symbolic, but he's been doing it for 40 years. Yeah, I guess you're right. When you do something for that long, you don't need to be hands-on anymore. I guess what it is that I expect, if you're not hands-on after a point like this, you then get reps to do that for you, right? Like, I'm thinking of people, when I worked at this hotel in Connecticut, it was a family-owned giant resort. It was a huge business, and it was family-owned, and I was thinking, like, maybe he would have some touchstone people in place. She says, like, the guy looking for the dwarves. Like that, but that guy says that he's not supposed to be there, right? Like, he tells Blade, have you seen them? I'm not even supposed to be here asking you, but if they don't come through. So he is waiting on the Earth side of things for people to come through. There's nobody on their side of things that's, like, keeping track of things and reporting back. The closest thing that we have is Dragon Lady, who's taking the surveys, but she's acting as a customer and is like technically, even though it's very obvious, supposed to be undercover. He doesn't have like a general manager, you know, somebody that, so that's the part that I'm like, how long does it take for all of what's going wrong to even get back to him? I would have thought by now, whole cities being emptied of people, you know, hundreds of soldiers like disappearing in the middle of the night, that this stuff would be getting back to him. The dwarves not showing up, for example, you know, like that at the very least, as far as like whether your customers are satisfied, maybe not. Maybe he doesn't give a shit. He's got their money. What does he care? But he's not getting the tribute that he's supposed to be getting, and that I would expect to get his attention. Maybe he's just so rich that he doesn't even care. But yeah, so that's the part that I find a little confusing, is just that he's technically the force that they're all supposed to be like rebelling against. But I don't understand how how connected he is to all of this from moment to moment, and when he's supposed to find out that this has all been going on. I just want more of a sense of what kind of information he even has from day to day, if any. Or does he just like start the pilgrim tours and then he goes to the Bahamas and like doesn't, you know? And part of that is also me not really knowing how the movement from our world to this world works. Like, can a portal be opened anywhere? Or is there one specific place that a portal has been opened, and it's just because that's sort of a thing in like the Dresden Files. There are certain places that portals are open and you can't really move them. Like you can open, you can't really move them if you want to get to a certain place. If you want to just get to the other side, you can open one anywhere. But if you want to start and end in a certain place, it's easier in one spot than another. So if he's like, you know, on vacation in the Bahamas, can he still jump up from his lounge chair and open a portal into this world from wherever he's at? Or would he need to like, you know, fly back to London and go into his manor house and go into this one room where there's a doorway that's been open that's used as the entrance and exit? So yeah, I'm just curious about how all of that works. And I feel like I don't know enough about Kit to be able to tell whether or not he would be savvy isn't the word I want. Whether he would be good enough at deception to fake a death in order to help out Mara. I don't know how good he is at lying. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. You think Kit faked his own death? Oh, you must have missed that, Patricia. I think you might be bouncing in and out. But yeah, that's what I was saying. Like that maybe Kit is like, that was one possibility, that Kit maybe faked his death and used an illusion to make it look like he died when really he went to help Mara or, you know, the other hundreds of people who are on strike somehow. I don't know why he would. I don't know why they need him specifically. I don't know. But that's the only thing that I can think is that, you know, because I can't imagine that he's actually dead. And he might be. And I might just be very much in denial. But I just like, I keep thinking about ways that this isn't true because there's no body. All right. I'm just going to say that. And this is the thing for me in movies, TV shows, and books. If there's no body, anything is really possible. Unless they find Kit's bloated corpse, I don't think he's dead. It's certainly possible that he actually is. And if he is, that'll be crushing. Blade's gonna be like ripped up. But if there's no body, all Kit needs to do is make an illusion of ripples and bubbles coming up from the lake. And that's all. And maybe they needed to do something. Maybe Kit is part of a plan to force Dirk to quit. Maybe that's what they need to do, is get everybody on the same page where they are all on strike. And they knew that the only thing that would cause Dirk to like completely abandon his duty would be the death of one of his kids, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I got all these kinds of crazy theories moving around in my head. I'm trying to think if there was anything else specifically that I wanted to talk about. Fucking Barnabas, man. And that, okay, so I do want to talk about that. Barnabas' magic. Because we have Barnabas, you know, saying that his magic is holding and it's just fine on the soldiers, those like dome things. Obviously he was incorrect, and bear with me here, or he wasn't incorrect. It is just fine because the magic is meant to make the soldiers shoot at Kit. What about that? How about that for some crazy conspiracy theories? It's either the magic did not hold and the soldiers hate Kit so much that they just, you know, went after him the second that they got some free will back, or Barnabas put a spell on them with a like little caveat that they were to attack their own side with a relish as soon as they got a chance. Patricia says, I love all the conspiracy theories. Well, I am glad to oblige you. Barnabas wants to kill Kit now. Well, not necessarily to kill Kit, but like to help with the because Barnabas is in on this conspiracy with Carita, right? Like, so if they want Dirk to quit, then he would have to do something to make it look like the soldiers turned on Kit. So, I was wondering when you'd get back to Carita. I've mentioned Carita a couple times. Girl, where you been? Cause yeah, she says, sorry, work. Yeah, cause that's what I'm saying is like Carita is obviously my running theory is that all of the women are being like targeted to go on strike and disobey orders because somehow Carita and Mara are like in with each other and getting all of the women to like, and I'm wondering if that's like a loophole in the contract with the demon that Chesney is working with, that like all the men need to obey, but they're like, well, I am not a man. But that if Carita, like, you know, she's working with Barnabas, if she wants to do something that forces Dirk to quit and gets him to like reject his duties, then making it seem like Kit is dead is the way to do that. And so Barnabas would have to put a spell on the soldiers that would force them to shoot at Kit. Right? Like appear to shoot at Kit. I don't know if it looks like they're maybe that's part of the spell is that their weapons aren't real. I don't know. I feel like if there was a spell that made their weapons look real, but they weren't, that is something that Dirk would pick up on. But maybe that's not what he's looking for. Maybe it's just like he's not looking for that kind of magic. I don't know. Because that's all I can think. I can't accept that Kit's dead is basically all it comes down to. I don't want him to be dead. He's very important. I feel like we don't have a body. All those things to me add up to that he's not dead. It sure fucking looks like he's dead though. And if their aim was to get Dirk to quit, they fucking succeeded. I just can't imagine what happens now that Dirk has quit. Like, that's the thing that I want to know about is like the immediate aftermath of doing something like this. You don't just, he can't just go home to his apartment and barricade himself in and not take calls and not go down to the lobby and tell his doorman to keep people away. His house is part of this whole fucking venture. So he goes home and he's still in this garbage. So that's the part that I'm like, well, what even happens then? I don't know, guys. I'm very curious. All right. Well, I feel like I'm kind of going in circles here. I'm still worried about what Shona's up to. Because I feel like we're meant to think that maybe she's grown up, but I don't trust it. I feel like there's something there. I don't know. And the fact that Mara said Shona was going to make trouble, I'm just like, but why? Why do you think that? And what was she going to do? Is it just because Shona's like not in on everything along with everyone else? And why not? Why isn't she? I don't know. Also, did the horsewoman recall all the horses? Did she? I feel like she must have, though, because everything seems to be all of the women, and she's a woman, and if she has the ability to do that, fucking great timing, man. Ruin everything, fuck it all up. Just take all the horses. Why not? It's just, and Dirk's theory is like, oh well, somebody tested her, and they did mistreat a horse, and she fucking followed through with what she said she was going to do. And I'm like, maybe she just is on orders to fuck y'all's day up. Maybe that's all it comes down to. The fact that she took his others as well, Pretty and Beauty, which he does not feel like should fall under her jurisdiction, is interesting. He feels like she doesn't have a right. And there's something about her power that feels like really elemental that I'm like, if she didn't have a right, she wouldn't have been able to do it. But I don't know that that's valid. I'm just sort of like, it might not be that her power is that sort of like natural. It's just that she has very particular control. So that is another question. Man, a lot happening here, guys. Well, thank you, Patricia, for this commission. This was really interesting, and for having me do it live. That was fun. I hope that I hope that I did it justice. That's what I want to say. I actually meant to do each chapter separately. Oh, well, there it is. I did both. Yeah, I hope that's okay. But yeah, my bad. Yeah. Well, I feel like this worked out well though, because it was too like they gave me enough to talk about afterwards. I'm not sure that just reading one and then talking about just that one chapter would have really been enough. So I feel like this made for better discussion overall. The first chapter ends with Blade disappearing, and I thought that would be a good cutoff. Yeah, that's fair. That's true. Although we don't actually get Blade, like, the details of his disappearance until this one, and I feel like that gives me a little bit more to work with. But, well, nevertheless, I hope that this was okay. And I'm really like impressed by how weird this book is. It's nothing like what I expected. Even when I knew what we were getting into after the first couple chapters, it still like hasn't gone in the direction that I thought at all. It's so strange. What a weird idea, I wonder where she came up with this. Yeah, I just would love, I wish, that I could sit down and have a chat with her and be like, so what 10-year-old were you talking to that gave you this idea? Because this feels like an idea that a 10-year-old would get after reading Lord of the Rings or something, right? Like, you're like, oh, I wish I could go. Or even a fucking adult after watching the Lord of the Rings movies is that you wish that you could go to where they filmed them and actually go to Rivendell and go to the Shire and stay in one of the little houses and the whole shebang. So maybe, she wrote it making fun of fantasy books. That's fair. Yeah. So yeah, this is a lot of fun. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you to Patricia. Sorry for doing 2 chapters when you meant 1, but, I think 2 worked out well. So hopefully you're okay with that. And, yay. And yeah, guys, I will be seeing you soon with a new episode. So until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.